Hi guys, it feels like it's been a really long time, and it has. Um, just for information, I am working from home at the moment, and I thought this was a perfect opportunity whilst we're in really uncertain times, and some of you will be self-isolating at home or your schools might be closed. So I thought, what a perfect opportunity for me to get some videos out. We are just going to act like these exams are going to be as we're preparing for until we know otherwise, and so therefore let's just keep cracking on and getting that revision done for these summer exams. So what I wanted to do, I'm going to do a series of videos over the next couple of days about Macbeth. Quite a few people asked me questions on that, about just kind of how to approach the extract and sort of tackling the question. So I thought I would have a look at this sample paper. This is one that the exam board produced a few years ago, so it hasn't been an actual question. But you know, it doesn't mean that this topic of the Macbeth marriage couldn't easily come up. And I will just apologise in advance because I'm at home. I've got a really lively 10-month-old Labrador, and a couple of cats and a washing machine. So I'm so really apologise if the sound quality isn't what it should be. But there you go. So if you hear barking or scratching or combinations, I haven't gone feral, it's just my creatures. Right, okay, so if we look at this question, as always, we're going to approach by looking quite carefully at the contextual information that the exam board give us here at the top. So we can see that this extract is from Act 1, Scene 7. They'll always tell you where the extract is from. And as I say to my class, anything that comes from Act 1 means that it is the exposition of the play. It really means the start. But what we're kind of really looking for is that anytime you get the start of a play or a novel, this is the introduction to something, and it's the establishment of something. So this could be plot, it could be theme, it could be character. Now in this case, because the question is on the Macbeth marriage, we think that this is going to be part of an introduction and establishment to what that marriage is like. So think about when you're writing your response about how you can mention words like introduction, establishment, particularly when you're thinking about Shakespeare's purpose. So at this moment in the play, Macbeth has left the banquet and he and his wife are holding for Duncan. His wife has come to find him. There's two important bits of information here about the marriage. One, that he has left the banquet. This is reminding us as audiences about the fact he's really conflicted about committing regicide. And we know that at the start of Act 1, Scene 7, he has that whole soliloquy where he thinks about his vaulting ambition and decides that he doesn't want to go through with it. His wife has come to find him. She clearly realises that there's a problem. So she is concerned, maybe less about his well-being and more about, is he going to back out on this plan? So there's some important information for us there at the start. Equally, when we look at the question itself, let's remember that we are looking at the marriage between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. That's the focus for this question. So we are going to, sorry, cat's already come to disturb me. We're going to have a look at the extract, see what we think is important, and then we're going to plan what we would do for the rest of the play. I may do this into two videos, a planning one and then a kind of writing response. I'll see how long I ramble on for with this, because I don't want it to be like really like a 50-minute tutorial by any means. Right, okay, so let's have a look at the extract, and we're thinking, remember that key focus, which is what do we learn about the marriage? So the first thing kind of to notice is that she starts with this question, or the proper word for this would be an interrogative. If you think about it in the same way as an interrogation is asking people questions. So an interrogative here, why have you left the chamber? It's sort of establishing, isn't it, the kind of dominance that she has, that she can question her husband. Think about here the context of this. Think about specifically what you already know about gender roles. So the idea of men and women, how they should have behaved at that time. So for her to be quite challenging of her husband might already be an interesting point to make. Macbeth goes on to say, has he asked for me? No, you not, he has. So I was talking to my class about this yesterday. What you see evidence of here, structurally, is a split line. As we know, most of the lines follow iambic pentameter, so they've got 10 syllables per line. What you get here is, hath he asked for me? 5. No, you not, he has. That split line, then, they kind of share the iambic pentameter, but what it's really meant to demonstrate is an interruption. Macbeth doesn't get to finish what he wanted to say because she interrupts, going, don't you know he's been asking for you? And this interruption then might suggest degrees of irritation that she has with her husband for leaving. Okay, let's think about how Macbeth then takes command of the situation when he says, we will proceed no further in this business. Now, this is, in terms of sentence types, a declarative. It's a statement. We are not going to do it. Notice here, he uses a plural pronoun, we. He's made a decision collectively for them in their marriage, and he's saying we're not going to carry on with this. You might also want to think about the fact, though, that he talks about regicide, murder, as this business, which is a kind of ambiguous term. I talked to my class yesterday's lesson about how this is actually a euphemism. It's a more pleasant way of saying something. So rather than saying murder, savage slaughter of my king and bestie, he's actually saying this business. He just can't bring himself to say that. And we know that actually this is something that's common with Macbeth. He talks about the deed at a later point. He can't bring himself to actually say those words. He's honoured me and blah, 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 blah. So if we sort of summarise what we know about Macbeth's decision-making for their marriage, there's something here about they should appreciate what they have. Okay? They've got this new admiration, he's got this new promotion to Thane of Cawdor. He shouldn't be just, greedy and overly ambitious. And again, what we see is another example here of a split line, another interruption, which in this case, is this an interruption of irritation, or is this something, a stronger emotion from her? She's kind of disbelief, in a state of disbelief rather. She's incredulous, which means kind of confused and just unable to process what he's saying. And then what we get are a number of sort of accusations and manipulative comments from Lady Macbeth. I've talked to my class about looking in an extract about who is the dominant participant, which really means who speaks the most, and clearly Lady Macbeth talks the most in this. So she literally dominates the dialogue here. And then look at some of the examples. Now, we don't need to talk about every single one, but she accuses him of being were you drunk? Basically, she's questioning, does his courage only come about if he's had a drink? And now that you're sort of sobered up, you're just cowardly with this. And she says, are you afraid of this? Blah, blah, blah. Just look, again, at punctuation. I would look at the number of these kind of fast-paced, fast-fire questions that really don't give him any opportunity to speak. Now, in the exam, you can't go through every single bit. So we're looking at the kind of couple of key quotes from this. I think there's this statement here is super manipulative. From this time, such I account thy love. We would basically say that you don't love me. Or it's that kind of emotionally manipulative comment of, if you loved me, you would, X, Y, Z. So this is incredibly kind of manipulative, because she's saying that if he loved her, he would kill the king for her. Another kind of key question really is when she says, are you afraid? Afeard meaning afraid. So there's a kind of sense here that she really questions his courage and his bravery. Now, in terms of linking this into some context for ourselves, we think about things like the chivalric code, the idea that he is a soldier and, you know, therefore sort of seen to be very brave and noble, and actually she's questioning what courage or bravery he even has. And she's saying, you know, are you too scared to act on what you want? And, you know, you've got this language of cowardice, which is continued here, live a coward. We see another, so structurally, we see another split line. This time, it's Macbeth interrupting his wife. Now, this doesn't feel like an interruption of irritation or rage like we've just seen from her, because actually he's saying, please, peace. So he takes on a kind of pleading tone, in which he's almost begging her to stop. So this kind of gives us clues about, I don't know, just how abusive this particular rant is from her, but maybe also symptomatic of a wider behaviour within their marriage. He says, I dare do all that may become a man, who dares do more is none. And so really he's trying to defend his really sort of his status as a soldier, but thinking contextually, his very kind of status as a man, he's trying to defend that from his wife, who's reacted with kind of brutal rage towards him. So we've done quite a lot of thinking there about the extract. What I would always do then before I even start writing it, I would think about what other links to the rest of the play do I want to make. So I want to think about something from the exposition, so the start, really Act 1, the climax, which we can ish-bish think about in terms of Acts 2, 3 and 4, and then the denouement, Act 5. That's kind of rough guidance in terms of structurally, but if you want to say at the beginning, middle and end, that's absolutely fine as well. So this is obviously from Act 1, Scene 7, which this section, this extract fits into this. But I would encourage you to also think about Act 1, Scene 5. We first meet her, she's delivering the soliloquy, which already shows that she, and therefore her role in their marriage, is going to be important. We see that he has sent her the letter, and this really indicates the level of trust that they have. He calls her actually something, I think he calls her his partner in greatness within the letter. So there's a sense of equality and that he wants to share everything with his wife. So they kind of share and are honest. In terms of her role within the marriage, she obviously talks about how she feels he's too full of the milk of human kindness in that soliloquy. But she also says, hie thee hither that I may pour my spirit in thine ears. And really that shows how keen, how desperate she is to get him home so she can manipulate him. Get home quickly, that I pour my spirits in thine ears. She understands just how powerful her influence is over her husband. And equally at the end of Act 1, Scene 5, she does talk about, he's saying, we'll talk later about your crazy plan to kill Duncan. And she says, no, leave all the rest to me. Showing that she's taking a really significant role within their marriage. So if we think about Acts 2 to 4, I would encourage you to think, focus on things like Act 2, Scene 2. So this is just after he's killed Duncan. And, her response to the fact he hasn't executed, excuse the pun, the plan as well as she wanted. And she says, infirm of purpose, give me the daggers. She's frustrated and angry with him. She equally says to him, a little water clears us of this deed. Whereas we know that Macbeth is there saying, his hands, they will never be clean, he's never going to sleep again. So you get distinct kind of differences in their response. She is what we would say blasé, as in she's kind of laid back and unbothered about it, whereas his response is to immediately feel remorse. You could also be mentioning things like Act 3, Scene 2. She asks him, why do you keep alone in his room? And this really tells us that their marriage has started to become quite distant. Rather than the sharing the letter, immediately telling her, he's talking about or alluding to his plan to kill Banquo at this stage. But he says to her, be innocent of the knowledge. So he's increasingly secretive rather than sharing things. So I think that you could talk quite nicely about the way that their marriage is starting to deteriorate. And then there's a real absence of them because they don't actually appear, well, Lady Macbeth doesn't appear at all in Act 4. So we could think towards the end, she is now, alone and mad. She sees the blood on her hands and talks about out-damned spot. Sorry, her handwriting's tiny and crushed up. So their marriage has really splintered apart, and we can see that without each other, they are feeling quite fractured. And equally, we know that when he talks about her using the metaphor of out brief candle, and she should have, I hope this quote's right, she should have died hereafter. We can see, can't we, that there's a sadness and a poignancy, but ultimately we know by this point he's almost indifferent and detached. So I would be wanting students, or hoping that students would really focus on that sense of the level of trust and intimacy, although there was clear evidence at the start that it was manipulative, just how abusive and toxic it got, as exemplified in this. And I would probably actually be adding some stuff on about, dash the baby's brains out, which comes a little bit further from this, and how she manipulates and turns him round to saying, okay, let's go through with it. I'd be then thinking about their sort of different reactions to killing Duncan and the parts they played in that, the way that the rot sets in their marriage and they become distant. And then thinking, by the end for them as, their marriage, they are entirely separate. They are alone and really have gained nothing from their ambition and from their scheming, the regicide. She obviously has maddened. The implication is she commits suicide. He obviously faces his fate at the hands of Macduff alone. Okay, so that would be my planning for this question. I'm going to upload another video where I kind of work through part of a response and then just show you a bit of a framework that you could use, and you could perhaps have a bit of time practicing this question yourselves. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.